Do you remember? Do you remember the Phantom Hill Band?
Yes.
Or,
Yeah.
Josh
yes.
Fagan. Okay.
Yeah.
I went to their practice the other night, and those guys are all like TDC Guard military family, and they were just up there kind of, you know, having their beers and stuff. But they actually got a good sound to them. It's like almost a little bit of Leonard Skinner. And
Good Southern rock type. Yeah. Good mix of
like
sound.
A hybrid.
Yeah.
And when I remember interviewing him at the first show they had at the station, and he's only been on stage and performed on stage 3 times ever.
Wow.
But he's carries. I mean, he gets down like it's no new species to him at all.
Yeah.
So they like when you see like a group like that, like it's just kind of coming, like they've already taken like the initiative to like lease their studio, like they're building the studio. They want to produce their own album. They want to record their own album, and then they're kind of just promoting themselves based on just, you know, what's readily available, social media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What is the what do you think is like is the Achilles heel, or is what's the catalyst for? Is it just talent or network or for a group like that, like this just kind of coming out of the woodwork?
You know, one of the first things I recommend to bands that want to make it in the Abilene area is to get out of the Abilene area and play. For real. I mean, it's sad because this town has more musical talent in it than anywhere I've ever lived. I lived in Dallas-Fort Worth, and for the size town this is, it's saturated with great musical talent, not just half-assed musical talent. I mean, I'm talking good musicians. And but young bands coming up, I think that you really, to stand out, you got to have a really strong image. You got to be willing to, at first, take some gigs that don't pay very good, you know. And then you have to be really good at what you do, really good at your craft. You can't, there's a cycle that happens in music in this town particularly, more than anywhere I've ever seen it happen, where you'll have a handful of really awesome bands. And all the venues book those really awesome bands. And there's usually 4 or 5 good venues in Abilene. And they'll book those bands and pay them a really good price. Other guys see this and they start forming their little side bands. Guys that have day jobs that, you know, aren't really full-time musicians. They'll form these bands, and they're okay, you know, they're garage bands, but they'll go out and start booking gigs, and they'll take a gig for $300 with a 5-piece band.
And that's like normally entails a couple, 3-4 hour sets?
Yeah, about a 4-hour set, you know, and they'll go in and take those gigs. Well, then a place like Remington's or Chelsea's or something, they start getting these bands in there that'll do it for $300, and you have professional musicians out here that this is all we do for a living, and our price goes from making $600 or $700 for the band for the night. They're like, well, we're not going to hire these guys because we can get these other guys for $300.
Right.
And so then the market starts getting saturated with all these part-time bands.
Right.
And so then the price goes down for the full-time bands. And so then what happens is your quality of music in your bars and stuff starts to taper off.
Sputter out.
Yeah, and you start, you know, you go out, a typical person goes out to a bar to see a band play, and they're like, man, these guys suck, let's go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Oh man, these guys suck, let's go somewhere else. The good bands, meanwhile, are playing in other towns because there's no money here.
Yeah. So you said you're from Dallas-Fort Worth, so you're familiar with
I've lived up around there.
Grizzly Theater and the Aardvark, and
Yes.
there was, I remember I used to work in the Admiral Hotel, and they had a little club in there, and they would pay they would pay those bands a pretty good significant amount of money.
Well, just as a way of comparison, when we play other places, if we play in Dallas-Fort Worth area, you're looking at between $900 and $1,200 for a 4-piece band. You know.
And that's straight, you guys take that for the night?
Yeah, for the night. And the gigs up there a lot of times aren't those 4-hour bar gigs. A lot of times you do 2 90-minute sets, you know, or sometimes 2 1-hour sets. It's not like it is. I mean, here you play from 8 to midnight.
Yeah.
You know, or from 9 to 1.
Right.
A lot of times. Now I say that there are some really good venues here that take care of the bands, you know. But But that's what I'm saying is there's a cycle that goes on, and when that market gets saturated with all the bands that are, people
Yeah.
stop going to see the live music. The crowds start tapering off, and then so the bars decide, well, we could just do karaoke, or just have
Open
DJ,
mic,
a little cheaper,
yeah.
So then they quit having live music, and then there'll be one or two venues left that'll still have live music. Well, then all these part-time bands, they can't get gigs anymore, so they fade away. Then there's not as much live music around, and then some bar owner here, or the one or two bars that remain, they'll get a good idea. Hey, let's bring back some of the good bands around here. They get in touch. They decide we'll pay them what they want. They pay what they want. People go, hey, so-and-so's playing back in town again. Flock to the show. Crowds come back up. The good bands start making good money. They start playing around Abilene more often,
Right.
And then the cycle starts again.
Starts again.
And I've watched this ever since I first came to Abilene in 1989. Was the first time I moved to Abilene, and I've moved back to the Metroplex a couple of times. But from that time until now, I've watched that cycle constantly in this town.
Just back and forth.
Back and forth, yeah. And that's why I've always liked guys like Coy over at the station.
Right.
That's why I like him so much and what he does. He always has good music in his bar.
Right.
He's not going to put some half-baked band in there, and he pays the band a fair, decent wage, to do what they do, and
Right.
And so he always has a good band in there. I know if I'm on a Friday or Saturday night wanting to go see a band, I'm safe going in there.
Okay.
I'm safe going in there to see a band because he's always got good entertainment in there.
So that's one of the premium spots.
Yeah, and I wouldn't. And I hope this is all off the record right here because I don't want to
No,
get
no,
out
no, I
of
got
what he
you.
pays because I know he pays us real fair.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And I think he must with other bands too because he gets good bands in there.
Yeah, he does.
He always has good
What do you think about now? One of the local legends, is beyond the shadow of a doubt, like a Blind Terry.
I
He's
love
been
Blind Terry.
he's been like I guess for a country town that's living to die or dying to live like the city nightlife like Abilene sometimes.
Mhm.
He's just. How would you go into describing him?
Blind Terry, well, first and foremost, before we even get into what an incredible musician he is, he's one of the best people I know.
Right.
He's a great guy. I love that guy, man. He's really good to the musicians in this town, and he's just a good person all around. He's one of my favorite people around here.
Does he have a studio out in Holly?
He has a
or
studio
something
in
like
Holly. Yeah, I think it's called The Cave.
that? Okay.
But as a musician, he's a gifted guitarist and arranger of songs.
Right.
The way he arranges songs and stuff.
I notice he'll be rocking on the drums sometimes too.
Yeah, he plays drums, guitar. I think he plays everything. He's a very talented musician, and I've enjoyed when I saw him at the West Texas Songwriting Competition. I'm like, oh, now this isn't fair. Terry's he's awesome, man.
I was rooting for him.
Yeah, I was too. I gave him real high marks on there, and he was one of the top ones on my scorecard. I love the way he writes songs, and I love his voice. He's got a voice. He does a lot of different types of singing with his voice, but he's got this one thing that's a little Joe Cockerish that he does sometimes.
Yeah.
And when he does that, I'm always like, yeah, my ears perk up.
And then another thing that's like impressive to me about him is he's really very, very articulate and well spoken. Like
Yes.
when I interview him every time or whenever he's got this other dynamic about him that like he's just got like the whole package. I
Yeah.
figured he would have in that. I know that competition I guess favored maybe the younger hip hop crowds and like the more electrifying atmospheres, but he was. Do you remember when on the first of ever America's Got Talent when Kevin Skinner came on there and he was like a chicken catcher and he opened his mouth and they were laughing at him at first and then he ended up winning the whole contest?
Yeah.
That's who he gives me that vibe, but on a more serious level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love Terry, man. He's one of the guys I'm talking about when I talk about the level of talent in this town, and then of course you got Tony Barker.
Mm-hmm.
Guy's tremendously great songwriting talent. In fact, as far as songwriters go, I have like my own personal top 10 list, and it includes people like Willie Nelson, Jackson Brown,
Mm-hmm.
Billy Joel, Prince, These are songwriters that Freddie Mercury from Queen, one of the
Okay.
greatest songwriters ever in my opinion. And there's one local guy in that group, and that's Tony Barker.
Okay.
His lyrics that he writes, and of course, you know, he's far beyond being in contest. You know, as far as I'm concerned, if he got in a contest, I'd be like, no, this isn't even fair.
Right.
You know, because he's at that level of songwriting. He's the guy that if I go out and see him, I'm saying do some original stuff, and as soon as he starts doing it, man, he reaches something in there.
Yeah.
You know, and so he's my favorite local songwriter.
Okay. That was the next question I was going to ask you, and it's funny you said that because that's what Blind Terry said. He's like, it's not about the sing. You remember I asked him. He said, it's not. This competition is not about the talent or necessarily the performance. It's about the songwriting. Because when you get up there on stage, you give away part of your soul. And that was my quote to sum up everything.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think a little bit last year in the competition, the ones I judged, it almost seemed like it started becoming more about the performance and more about the playing ability and stuff like that than the songwriting itself. Because last year there were a couple of songwriters that I gave really high marks to, and I know Terry Knight from the Bears, she was judging at that one too, and she gave them really high marks too. But there were sometimes I think Jimmy is the judge of the last year. He was one of the judges last year. Sometimes I think he put a little too much emphasis on the playing and the, you know, and things like that. Now you do have to have a good delivery of your song, but I think about Bob Dylan and Chris Christopherson, a couple of the greatest songwriters ever. They couldn't sing worth crap, you know, and weren't even really that great at players.
Yeah.
Just really good with writing lyrics, creating stories, and you know, and putting them to melody.
Yeah, I see Taylor Swift like that. See, I've never been a big fan of her voice. I mean, that's kind of corny, I guess, speaking on a female country artist, but I know she writes all her own music too.
Yeah, and I really respect and admire that.
And she's got a good little thing going on.
As a music instructor, and I teach a lot of kids, every young girl that I teach, that's one of the first things. I want to learn some Taylor Swift songs. And thank you, Taylor Swift, for writing everything with 4 chords in it.
Yeah.
It makes it easy. It's good music that connects to young people, particularly. So I've been able to